Hey guys, Nick Espinoza, your Chief Security Fanatic here, and today we're going to be talking about Facebook because newly released documentation from Facebook, secret emails, etc., show that Facebook basically lied about privacy to everyone, basically using it as a cover to make changes that really had nothing to do with privacy or security whatsoever. And this is very consistent for everything that Facebook has done. And you know that I've talked about this and written about this before. But here's what's going on. Facebook is actually going through a new round of rather intense scrutiny after 7,000 pages of confidential files stemming from a lawsuit were made public on November 6th. Now, a lot of this reporting comes from Ars Technica. I think they did an absolutely amazing job on this, and I've got some other sources here as well. But please feel free to read this for yourself. But here's what's going on, and here's the backstory prior to the release. Now, as of right now, 47 states out of 50 in the United States, their attorneys generals are basically, they've basically signed on to a new probe of Facebook, but California is actually one of the 3 states that is not participating in this probe. California is also not participating in a probe of Google, of which 48 states have now signed on their attorneys generals to a joint probe of them. California, however, is conducting a privacy investigation into Facebook. Now, the state attorney general for California, Xavier Becerra, on November 6th, basically went to court seeking to have a subpoena against Facebook basically enforced. Now, this petition alleges that Facebook failed to respond to repeated subpoenas and other legal requests for information related to the Cambridge Analytica scandal in 2018. If you remember, that's kind of the bomb dropping for privacy with Facebook. Now, these 7,000 pages of leaked information come from a 2015 lawsuit against Facebook by a now-defunct company called 643. Now, 643 created an app that scraped Facebook looking for pictures of women in bikinis. Real classy, guys. Facebook in 2014 changed the way their API key worked, basically breaking 643's app. So 643 sued, alleging a breach of contract, and I quote, fraudulent and anti-competitive schemes. And here's where it gets interesting. At the exact time 643 was launching their lawsuit, the United Kingdom was also conducting a probe into Facebook. And so a 643 executive was basically brought into a meeting with members of parliament in November of 2018, where he reportedly panicked and handed over all the confidential files from the case, despite a warning from a California judge not to, because obviously they filed in the state of California. This is where the documents come from, and the documents that basically have been out for a little bit, they've leaked in smaller chunks in the past year or so, basically showing that Facebook not only engaged in extensive lobbying against privacy protection laws in the EU, but also considered selling access to user data, which we know they've absolutely done. The full trove of files eventually leaked to a UK journalist, Duncan Campbell, who then shared those files with NBC News here in the United States, and basically a handful of other outlets got this as well. And so Campbell and those outlets eventually released the whole lot to the public on November 6th to basically coincide with what the California State Attorney General was doing. And here's the new information that we're learning. Obviously, everybody's still sifting through these, but basically the documents seem to confirm 2 long-held suspicions about Facebook. First, that it treats user privacy as basically a joke or an afterthought at best, and second, it works very hard to quash its competition from getting too powerful to ensure that they have their supremacy. Now, the first one that we're going to be talking about here is the privacy thing. And according to Ars Technica and the emails that you can read about this, it's basically called switcheroo. Now, Facebook in 2014 made significant changes to the way developers were able to access the user information, Facebook user information, through their APIs. This is the 643 lawsuit. But the company needed a way to sell this large-scale change, and so it came up with a narrative, and that narrative was privacy. And so internal communications, these documents that got dumped, reveal that Facebook ultimately tied the change to a revision of another product, Facebook Login. That is their login system. So if you go to a website that is not Facebook and it says login with your Facebook account, that's what we're talking about. And in a March 2013 email, one executive, Justin Osofsky, wrote that the narrative, and I quote, will focus on quality and the user experience, which will potentially provide a good umbrella to fold in some of the API deprecations. Now, the connection between these two was basically almost entirely for messaging. Just basically PR. Further emails confirm this. In a November 2013 email, Ilya Suchar, head of developer products until 2016 at Facebook, asked, and I quote, "What does it mean to tie the change to login besides synchronized timing? Is it just the messaging? What's the bullshit that you refer to?" Another executive replied to that and said, and I quote, "Mainly messaging." Suchar later described the plan as a switcheroo, writing in February 14th email, and I quote, "Hi guys, I invited you all to a doc that outlines the details of the switcheroo plan some of us have been knocking around. I think it is a good compromise given all the restraints, and we'll be able to tell a story that makes sense." So basically, they sold their API changes, which obviously changed the way people were data mining it as a move for privacy, when it didn't do any of that. They were still allowing developers in there to go ahead and data mine and data scrape as much as they wanted. They were just selling it as, oh, well, now we're synchronizing it or merging it in with the major change we're doing to Facebook login. And so these basically prove that other than synchronization of time, there was no privacy aspect to this whatsoever for the users. And now we have the documentation to prove it. Moving on, the next major prong that they have is basically killing competition, and these documents prove that what they did was possibly, behave in a predatory manner to ensure that they did indeed have a monopoly, that no competition could rightfully grow. And there has been a lot of talk in Congress, U.S. Congress, about breaking them up as a monopoly, because they have no natural competitors that basically fill all of these buckets. Similar talks have been down to Amazon. But emails among Facebook executives in 2003 show that the company planned to split up apps and services it didn't own into 3 different categories: current competition, potential future competition, or, and I quote, developers that we have alignments with on business models. Now, a series of email exchanges from 2013 also discuss in detail the choices Facebook made to prohibit potential competitors from advertising on its apps. The question of who qualified as competition other than Google, which was basically, which was a given because, Google was Google, was debated at length in emails. So, when we are looking at the category of current competition, I quote CEO Mark Zuckerberg, "I think we should block WeChat, Kakao, and Line ads." He wrote this in a 2013 email. I quote again, "These companies are trying to build social networks and replace us. The revenue is immaterial to us compared to any risk. I agree we should use ads to promote our own products, but I'd still block companies that compete with our core from gaining any advantage on us." The next category that we talk about is potential competition. That is established competition that's current. Here are the up-and-comers. So there was one called MessageMe, which was a messaging startup launched in 2013 and was acquired by Yahoo in 2014. And right out of the gate, Facebook leadership considered MessageMe to be too much of a competitive threat to allow company access to its data. But Facebook was obviously very aware that if they restricted MessageMe's access right out of the gate, it would look really bad. The optics would not be good. And so I quote Osofsky again, "In the first week after launch, MessageMe actually didn't make any friends.get calls." This is basically the function call that is going to start looking for the data that it's going to start scraping out of the users. And I continue to quote Osofsky. "However, MessageMe is now up to about 350,000 monthly active users and made 333,000 friend calls last week. We will restrict their access to friends.get shortly." So there you go. They basically have an up-and-coming competing platform, and unlike other developers that they're just allowing in to scrape data, if they saw you as a competitor, they wouldn't even want your money. They wouldn't allow you to do this. And then we have aligned developers. And this is in part what got them in trouble in the Cambridge Analytica scandal in 2018. But companies that fall into this particular category were able to make deals with Facebook to re-secure access to user data after this API change in 2014. Amazon is actually a prime example. They were allowed to continue because Amazon spent an absolute ton of money with Facebook on advertising, and Facebook did not see it as a direct competition. Amazon was not building a social network. They are just trying to sell a whole bunch of stuff, and that is concurrently what they continue to do. They've really not intruded on Facebook's space in that sense. And so there you have it. Basically, these documents prove that your privacy and security, because we've also caught Facebook storing passwords, in plain text. We know that 20,000 plus Facebook employees had access to read your password plain as day connected to your username. We have no idea if the developers had that access, but we've also found over 100,000 Amazon Web Services-based S3 buckets, meaning databases in the cloud from developers that are third parties that have been allowed into Facebook to be scraped, and researchers have found almost 100,000 of these exposed and readable, meaning your data is out there because Facebook allowed somebody in to scrape this. And their claims of basically enhancing your privacy by actually making this API key change was basically a complete sham. It was a lie and a sham. They changed that so they could have more control over their developers. But we've also heard from Facebook employees over the years that there are so many developers and third parties that have access to our data that Facebook can't even keep control of it. They can't actually quantify how many of them, are in there. And so here we are with a company that has literally once again lied to us about our privacy and our security, with Mark Zuckerberg going in front of Congress and going in front of the public saying that privacy and security is of paramount concern. It is a complete lie. And so if you are using Facebook, understand it's not just Facebook and their tens of thousands of employees that have your information. It's third-party developers, and they are doing God knows what with it, including exposing you, and hundreds of millions, if not billions of us have been exposed through third-party developers data scraping and then putting them into insecure databases. So I would take a long, hard look as to why you are actually using Facebook, to put out deep, dark, and intimate secrets. And I see that all the time, people using Facebook as a personal therapy group. Guys, we really need to stop. Mark Zuckerberg really needs to be tried, and he really needs to be convicted. If found guilty, put in jail. And that is your news of the day. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook, and Twitter, and also please feel free to subscribe to me on YouTube as well. And for the record, when I post this video onto Facebook, I'm actually going to spend $5 with Facebook to see if they will allow me to boost this to a wider audience. I do it every time I go after Facebook because, quite frankly, I think their user constituency, many of which just simply do not understand this or do not know this or do not keep up with this news. And if you are watching this, I'm really glad you are. And so with that, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, guys.